This is a meeting of the Operations and Oversight Committee. We do not have quorum at the moment. We're waiting for our fourth person to join us, and we'll actually convene officially when. Well, I guess we can convene, and we just won't be able to conduct any work until the fourth person joins us. So,
okay.
Amy, tell you.
So we're calling the meeting to order. We recognized that we do not have a quorum, but we are going to go through some of the program updates and other information. Before we move on, are there any conflicts of interest today with anything that's on the agenda? Okay, if there aren't, then Dan, why don't we skip down to Career Center opening, and you can give us an update on what's going on there.
Sure. So we are moving very diligently towards, I'm going to use the word opening of our career centers lightly. So about 2 weeks ago, we started with by appointment, and the staff have slowly been getting some experience with the by appointment. I am not confident at the moment that we've got 100% of the staff. I've told the staff that before we can officially open, I want to make sure that all staff have had the opportunity to do at least 1 or 2 appointments so that they're familiar with and have a certain amount of comfort with what it takes to maintain safety in terms of wearing the PPE, making sure the customer has PPE, the cleanup when they leave, you know, following them back out the trail, and all the different little things that we need to do to make sure that we're operating safely. So at this point, I believe we've got probably 75% of our staff, if you look at the entire team, that have done some level of by appointment in-person contact. I know that there's a couple of folks on the workplace team that haven't. Some of our bin service people have not. Our business information network folks, we're going to kind of be nudging them out into the in-person business visits. So I am hoping that, and I've got to do I'm going to have a little conversation with each of my supervisors to see if we can find a guinea pig career center that can do the in-person beginning next week. But if not, beginning a week from Monday, so the Monday after Labor Day weekend, we'll begin looking at having controlled flow into the career centers. So looking at the mandates for 6 feet and the total capacity, the rooms and all those things. We've redesigned all the career centers that we can get into. The Montour Falls, we can serve 2 staff plus the accessible machine, or 2 customers, sorry, plus the accessible machine. So we could max capacity in terms of customer walk-ins there is 3. In Elmira, we've got, it's kind of a big building and split apart. So the actual career center itself could do 3 plus the accessible machine, so a total of 4. That doesn't include the PTE folks that have their office spaces and things that they can use. So in a maximum capacity in that space, we might hit 6, 7, 8 people on a walk-in, but they'd be spread across multiple rooms and multiple floors. Bath will be 2 customers maximum. Hornell, we can't even get into the career center there, but Carrie on the workplace team is at the library, and she's not getting a lot of takers who want to do in-person things in the library, but in theory, once we know that she's comfortable with where she's at and we kind of confirm with the library that they're comfortable, she'll be able to do some walk-in types of activities probably that Monday as well. So that's where we're at with opening. We will have accessible machines in all of our locations for the folks that need those type of accommodations. The policies, we've got a lot of policies on cleaning and PPE and all those fun things. So staff will be required to wear masks whenever there is customers, even if the customer's more than 6 feet away, because we can't control when they get up and walk around and whatnot. Staff will wear masks. We've also provided face shields to all of the staff as well. If you've been to Walmart or a Wegmans or someplace shopping lately, they have those kind of plastic shields or whatever up by the cash registers. That really only works if each person is standing on either side of that plastic barrier. But with our customers kind of approaching greeter desks and staff from multiple angles, we just felt that having a face shield on or having that available to them was a little bit more effective, because the face shield kind of goes whichever way the face is looking versus someone walking around the plexiglass to, hand them a piece of paper or whatever. So at this point, masks are required, and we are moving ahead with optional face shields. What I am in conversation and debate on is whether the greeters in the career center would be required to wear the face shield as well as the mask when they're at that position, because the greeter would be where anyone could literally walk in the door and walk directly up to them, and they might not have the ability to have time to put, a mask or a face shield or whatever on. So the greeter may be required to wear the PPE their entire shift at that position. However, in terms of opening that's it on opening the center. So any questions on that or concerns or thoughts?
So Dan, I do have a question, couple of questions, I guess. First off, what do you feel the demand is once you do open? And then secondly, how are you going to communicate that the centers are opened and communicate that they need to have an appointment, and how they go ahead and schedule those appointments? Because I mean, if Hornell is any indication of what you may see, you could have people sitting around doing nothing, or the flip side could happen. Once the word gets out, you can be overwhelmed.
So I will tell you that I have no idea what it's going to be. I can tell you the Department of Labor is of the opinion that there's a lot of angry people out there with pitchforks and torches that are looking to storm the gates for unemployment, screaming and yelling. And thus that's part of their delay in getting their staff back into any center across the state. I can't say if that's true or not. I will tell you at one point in time, it was an absolutely true statement. There would have been angry mobs. But I think at this point, most of the angriest people are just sort of, they're beyond that and the money's started flowing. As far as my take on actual service demand, for some programs in some areas, I think we might get a fair amount. If you kind of divide what we do down to programmatic, I think that our emerging workforce team, if you look at that, I think at least for part of that team, there's a real desire to have some level of in-person service just to help kind of solidify that rapport and relationship with them. And so I would think there's some level of interest there, but that's a low volume overall. If you look at the career centers, general traditional walk in the door folks, right now, all of the work search requirements for unemployment insurance, as well as public assistance, have all been basically rescinded. So there is no stick forcing people like there would be in a normal situation to come to the career center or log work. And so I think until that stick is reintroduced to the system, it's completely a carrot-based system. So it's just those that want to find a job, which I think that motivation levels requirement that, has to be completely voluntary. I think it will be a pretty low volume, but I don't know. So how would we communicate it? Obviously, website, Facebook posts, maybe do some radio or television or penny saver type of advertisement. I would think the first couple of weeks, while we're really getting to get a feel of whether we're going to get rushed or not, I don't want to media outreach it, just to see what there's, what demand there is just naturally. But if there is nothing, then I think we have an obligation to our residents to, inform them that they do have the ability on a limited basis to walk in. That's a long answer, and I apologize, Jamie.
Nope, that's fine. Any other questions for Dan on the Career Center openings? Okay. Well, thanks for the update, and keep us updated on what's going on there and how we can help get the word out if need be. ADA accessibility standards.
So ADA. So we don't have a lot of momentum on ADA. All of our machines are functioning in the centers when we reopen and whatnot. The 6 foot social distancing, makes from a accessibility to the center's perspective. I mean, there's wide open travel lanes everywhere. So the 36-inch ADA requirements are more than met. So we're good to go there. Beyond that, I don't have a whole lot to reintroduce or to share, other than I would like to have this group at some point begin thinking about, and I don't want to put too much on your plate. I know you got the standing youth program oversight, and we got the the QA stuff through Rayanne, and we got the operator report stuff that we're really getting some growth on, and we're introducing the RFP. But I would like to at least have the group begin maybe thinking about services and or outreach and or specific activities targeted towards folks that might be in this cohort of workers. The only reason I say that is I think the shift in our world towards remote work might actually benefit some of our folks with disabilities, because if some of the challenge for folks with disabilities is transportation, working from home, you've basically eliminated that barrier for them. I think and maybe I'm out in left field, and if I'm saying something that feels inappropriate or seems inappropriate, please correct me. But I really have hope in this kind of remote work environment that it will work to the benefit of folks that might have varying levels of disability, and lowering that field, allowing them to work from their homes or other locations. I'd love to talk a little bit about that, and if we can help there a little better than we are.
Any thoughts or comments for Dan on that issue?
Let me just add that our new website has accessibility features on it.
Thank you. I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah.
And Dan, I do think that you're correct. This new work at home environment or virtual environment is likely here to stay. I was on a session earlier today with a couple of actually 3 leading site selectors globally. And one of the things they were saying is that, for most major developed markets around the world, whether it be China, India, here, they're seeing a decrease in leased office space by upwards of 25%, meaning that there is an influx of market or office space on the market because businesses are vacating those facilities as people are working more remotely. So if companies are vacating real estate at that level, that means that they have no plans in bringing those people back into an office environment.
Sure. Not for multiple years anyways. Yep.
It might be a good time for me to mention that we were recently awarded a grant through the Care Compass Network that is called Driving Employment, and it basically allows us to do kind of an Uber style transportation for people pursuing employment activities, employment itself, until a more permanent transportation options in place. Oftentimes there's just that hurdle and gap to even exploring. And so hopefully we'll have that program up and running soon. It's called Driving Employment, and we'll be able, at least for people with disabilities, to assist in that in that area. So
when you guys are up and running, and whomever on your staff is assigned to that, I'd love to introduce them to my friend Phyllis, and really and Keith ultimately as well too,
yes.
But really drive that connection.
Yep, that'd be great.
AJ, is that just for Chemung County?
No, I think, well, I have to look and see, but I'm sure we included at least Steuben in there as well, since we do business with Steuben as well.
Okay.
So
Good.
I don't think we have geographical limits on it.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Anything else on our ADA and individuals with disability update?
Oh, and there's Judy.
Just in time.
All right.
Judy, we were running out of things that we could go over without having quorum.
Uh-oh.
Yep. I lost her. She's just a JC on the bottom of my screen here.
I'm here. I see myself. Do you hear
Okay.
me?
Oh, now we do. Beautiful. So with Judy, we now have quorum for the Operations and Oversight Committee. So we can officially call it to order with board members present. Judy McKinney-Cherry is the chairperson, Jamie Johnson, Bill Caudle, and AJ Kircher. We also have another board member present at the moment, Bruce Boughton, as well. Non-board staff are present are Phyllis Ballier, Melissa Johnson, Rayanne Widmer-Mason, Keith Guthrie, and Nestor Leone from the workplace, and myself, Dan Porter, as well. So that all being said, Judy, just to bring you up to speed, we did cover the Career Center opening and the individual's disability portion because there was no action to be taken on those two bullets. So we'll hand the reins over to you, and it's all yours.
That's great. So I apologize. My agenda says we start at 2:30. So did we start at 2?
Today.
Okay, just saying. I apologize. I looked at the agenda, said 2:30. That's what I went with. So my apologies. So so you've already done conflict of interest, you've done minutes, or you've not done any of that?
No, we didn't do anything that required activity. So we did not do minutes. We didn't do community membership, youth program, operations, or RFP.
Okay. Well, and then I'll just sort of start from the beginning. So any conflict of interest that anyone needs to disclose at this time? Okay. Then I will, assuming that the minutes have been read, now that you've had a half an hour to do that, I will accept a motion to accept the minutes from the August 5th meeting.
This is Bill. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bill. Jamie, second. Thank you very much. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's talk about committee membership. So Dan, you want to sort of lead us off?
Sure. So Judy presented at the board meeting the desire to have some additional folks from the board, particularly private sector, join us on the RFP initiative. And we had two takers. We had Bruce Boughton and we had Margaret Lawrence that expressed an interest in the RFP. Between Judy and I, we've also spoke with these individuals, and they're actually interested in getting really involved and taking on a full operations and oversight load on the committee. So what you actually would be looking at is stretching the attendance or the committee membership from its current 7 to a 9-person board with one opening, which is the Department of Labor manager they haven't filled yet. But if there was an interest on that by the committee, you could certainly vote and include moving forward officially both Bruce and Margaret on the Operations and Oversight Committee.
So what I would share with you is that I think it's important to know is that, and Dan has expressed this to me as well, is, you know, when you start adding individuals to the committee, of course, it means the quorum number gets larger as well. And so I think that becomes really important as we begin to think about, you know, expanding the committee. I think it's important to think that it really we become very much responsible for making sure that we have quorum. In both cases, both Margaret and Bruce, and thank you, Bruce, for being on this in this meeting. In both cases, they both are interested in the RFP process. You know, we talked about at the board meeting having a a dedicated group sort of working on that RFP for the Operations Center RFP that's going out. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that. So there's two things in play. One is we have the RFP that has to be done. We'll have an ad hoc group that can do that, or we can do that as a committee of a whole. And then I also want to make sure everyone knows that when we expand if and when we expand our committee, we have to be responsible for making sure we're all here. And I'll open up for discussion. Thoughts?
So are we, not that I want to make the committee any bigger, but are we concerned about geographic diversity for both processes, whether it be the committee or the ad hoc. I mean, I think the ad hoc we can control, but when we start talking about committee membership, are we concerned that we will then be sort of lopsided on geographic diversity?
So when we kind of built this group, we kind of didn't do it necessarily by geography. We did it by area of expertise. So we had two folks really who were experts in a lot of lifetime experience working with folks with disabilities, and that's AJ and Jeanette kind of filled that role. We had two folks who had a wealth of experience working with youth populations, which is Bill and Joanne. And we had two economic development folks, which is Jamie and Judy. And then for rounding out and having kind of the representation from the Department of Labor, we've heretofore used the manager to kind of fill that role in. In this particular instance, we're effectively adding two private sector individuals to the group. So geographically speaking, we've not really been too worried about that. But what I would say to geography is when the day comes, we do face-to-face meetings. Both of these private sector folks live and or work in close proximity to where we meet, which is Montour Falls. So I think that would help us from a geography perspective when and if we get back into the face-to-face stuff. That's all I really have to say on it. I don't know. I don't want to speak for other board members. I'm just giving history.
Other thoughts? Jamie, I think it's a very, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm actually, when it comes to workforce, we all know that's not necessarily geography based. It's more regional. However, I think that your point is is one that the committee should at least take a moment and just think about. Other thoughts? All right. Any concern on the part of the committee with having private sector, so a specific private sector influence in some of our deliberations?
I don't really have a concern about it. This is Bill. If it's keeping. I mean, we're on operations and oversight about what the organization is providing. So, if anything, it opens the door to do we have consumers involved as well. So, no, I don't have any concerns.
Yep. Other thoughts? I agree, Bill. I think that it actually gives us the opportunity to say, this is a consumer. We're not just sort of thinking that we know. We actually have that opportunity to say that.
I would certainly welcome them. And if we're to that point, I would certainly make that motion that we include both the individuals as board members and expand the board or the committee. I apologize.
Okay. I will, Bill, I'm going to take that as a motion and see if there is a second.
I can second that.
Okay. AJ, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And I'm hearing by no further discussion that there is a nod that we will that we're all going to do our best to make sure we're making quorum each time. Okay. And so with that being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Any abstentions? Okay. Then it passes. So thank you.
So welcome aboard, Bruce.
That is terrible. That is terrible. And I have to say this. The good news is I actually don't know. I know that Margaret does live in Schuyler County, but I don't know where Bruce lives.
He's muted, so Bruce, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Okay.
If you want to.
I actually live in Horseheads.
Well, there you have it. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I wasn't quite sure, so that's awesome.
What I don't, just to show my lack of knowledge here, what are the two private industries we're now including?
So
Hey.
So I'll just tell you. So Margaret's not here. Margaret Lawrence is HR for Welliver builders.
Okay.
And Bruce can speak for himself.
I'm the branch manager for Chemung Canal here in both Montour and Watkins.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Very good. Okay, let's move right along. So, and actually, before we move to our Career Center opening topic, I do just want to take a moment and do a shout out for Jamie. So Jamie is incoming vice chair, right, for the New York State Economic Development Council.
Chair-elect, yeah, I think that's what the
Chair-elect.
official title is, whatever.
Yes. Well, what's important is that they're in the process of this is the end of their 2-day session, and they've had some pretty outstanding meetings, panels during these last couple days. And the one thing that I think is really clear, and we're listening to, is the impact and the importance of what we do here, our committee, and what CSS Workforce is doing. Because again, that was reiterated again, all of the changes that are happening sort of across the country around workforce. And so before we went to the Career Center opening, I just thought, and Jamie, we didn't rehearse this, but I thought you might just want to take just a minute, if you don't mind, and just sort of give your thoughts of what you took out of the sessions about workforce and where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still digesting some of it because, especially some of today's speakers, as they talked about site selection and the industry sectors that are in growth mode, some of which were a little surprising. Especially when you looked at transportation and logistics, where everybody thought the growth was, and that's like way down the list compared to biotech and advanced manufacturing and some others. Workforce is definitely an issue and right at the top of everybody's mind, but it's really more about skills now than it is truly about numbers. Yesterday, there was also a lot of discussion about diversity and inclusion, as well as social justice and trying to raise to raise those individuals out of poverty and how that impacts communities and community development. So I do agree with Judy. I think there's a lot to digest. There have been some very excellent speakers, and the one thing I will commend the staff at New York State Economic Development Council for is the level of speaker engagement has just gone through the roof, and some of that, quite honestly, is because we've gone to a virtual model and we haven't had to worry about flying people in and the logistics of bringing speakers to us. We were able to go to them because of the fact that we were doing everything through a virtual platform. So we heard speakers today from Texas and California and Florida and all over the world as far as some of the site selectors that we spoke with. So I do think Judy, you're absolutely correct. There is a lot for us to digest in those materials. For those of us who were registrants for the session, we are going to have access to all of those taped sessions that we can go back and pull pieces from, and I think it'd be very important to do so, and really start thinking about what the experts around the country are talking about and how we can use that to advance our initiatives and the things that we're trying to do here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Jamie. That is good. And so stay tuned. You may be having to watch a short clip from some of the meetings. So as we're going forward. So, okay. So Dan, let's move to the Career Center opening.
Yep. So I covered this pretty in depth already, but just to kind of reiterate, we have reached the point where the staff are doing the in-person by appointment. We still have a few lingering staff out there that need to kind of get that experience under their belt. But I'm fully expecting not this coming Monday, Labor Day, but the Monday after that, having some, or maybe in a perfect world, all of our career centers being able to put their toe in the water for walk-in customers on a controlled flow type of basis. we kind of don't want to do a whole huge amount of advertising on it until we see what kind of the natural pent up demand is. But once we get comfortable that we can handle then if when we're still not getting anybody coming into the career centers, then we may do some media outreach and things of that nature. But we're real close to doing that. We got a lot of protocols. We've got limited numbers of seats. At the gate, we'll be, if we have space for someone to come in for a walk-in, they can come in. If we don't, then they'll have to wait outside until the space opens up. So we're moving very diligently, but with a clear mission that we want to be open again to some extent. So,
Okay.
and we have not given up on the virtual. We still continue to put the emphasis on working with customers remotely if at all possible, because it overcomes immediate barriers such as childcare and transportation. If we can do it this way, and safety. So
Great. Well, I still continue to hear from many of our employers how they just can't find anybody. They just can't find a soul to work. Then they'll just take a warm body at this point. So I think the fact that the career centers are opening even in a modified fashion is good. All right.
Judy, I would like to just add to that we are hearing the exact same thing in Steuben County, that even with 10% unemployment, the employers are screaming for people.
Yep.
So I actually just provided some data to Southern Tier Central today from different sources, and one of their questions was, are people motivated to work? And I shared with them pretty bluntly, all unemployment insurance, work search requirements, all public assistance programs, the required work search activities have been waived. So you are seeing the true level of who actually wants to look for work out there right now. So all these unemployed folks, Department of Labor does not require them to look at all. They're not even meeting with people. There's zero requirement there. So this is a completely carrot-driven environment that we're in. There's no program at any level that is requiring people to look for work. And I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing. It just is the thing. This is it. This is the people that want to work.
Dan, any idea when you start talking about those people that don't want to work, that whether they truly don't want to work, they're afraid to go back to work, or they have other issues like childcare as kids go back to school? Any even sense of what those numbers and that breakdown looks like?
So here's what I'm not saying these folks don't want to work. What I'm saying is the people that want to actively look for work, this is what you see, the volume you see represents those that actively want to work. So for those that are not actively wanting to find a job, there's any number of reasons why they might not be doing it. Everything from, they're still okay on unemployment and some are still here. The kids are going back to school and they're remote, and you got all sorts of childcare issues. Some people are panicking over, right, wrong, or otherwise. They're still extremely nervous about, catching the disease. I don't have a real feel on that. What I will say relative to what you're asking is, we are going to be, and the staff we're beginning to put together some surveys, and we want to begin reaching out to job seekers and asking questions about, what are the benefits you're looking for, and what's kind of behind the scenes, be able to draw some inferences as to what it would take for them to get off the sidelines. So we're going to begin collecting some data and doing some surveys on that, and I may have some better stuff in the next couple of weeks for you. But right now, all I can say is the system that you see and the people that you see actively looking for work are those that truly actively want to look for work.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I didn't look at Steuben or Chemung, but I can tell you that when you look at year over year, our labor force, so the people who are officially going in looking for work in order to get unemployment, our labor force went up by 200. And there's no way that happened. That means that they saw the $600 and it caused them to get off the couch or whatever. I shouldn't say the couch, but it certainly and stimulated them to sort of get into the system. And so the question is, what do we do with that information? So to me, this is where we can be really intelligent about what we're doing, because we have a small enough universe. We need to identify who are those people that weren't in the system, that came into the system to take advantage of that $600, right? And then how do we, in a creative way, in an innovative way, figure out how to get them, if they've made that effort, now how do we get them to the next step so they're actually in the workforce and we're able to get them trained? And so I'm throwing that out there because I'm telling you, 200 people in Schuyler County.
That's huge.
A huge number that literally entered the workforce.
Yeah, we had like 400 in Steuben.
Yep.
That's significant. So I don't know. I'm throwing that out there, hoping that somebody else will sort of maybe has a good idea of what to do, but how to find them and how to keep them in the workforce, right? How to your point, Dan, maybe they're not really interested. They just wanted money. But who knows? Maybe if once they were found out and we went back to them and said, we have something for you and we have training for you, how do we get you to that point?
So I've kind of phrased it mentally as the people that were in the gray market economy. So if you were quote unquote self-employed and you could qualify for the $600 by declaring your self-employment, I think that's what pulled them into the sunlight of the system. So I think they've always been to varying degrees in the workforce, but it's really more in terms of the self-employed individuals or the gray market or whatever you want to call it. That being said, I've asked for data, and it's not just me. Other WIB directors across the state we've talked about this. We want this information to begin coming up with a plan, and Department of Labor, they tell us they're unable to share that information with us as far as active lists of people due to confidentiality around UI and all that fun stuff. And I have to take them at their word on that, but. We could, in a roundabout sort of way in the past, if I had management reports and things like that, we could maybe kind of ferret through it and dig through and see if there were some little indicators we could get a handle on some of them. But because I don't have that access, I have no way to do it. I'm at the mercy of, can we please have the list, and the state saying, no, we can't give it to you. I'm sorry to say that. I'm not bragging about it. I'm just is.
It seems to me that if it's happening here, it's probably happening other places around the country. And this is a great example of where we go to see if somebody else has figured it out already, like somewhere.
I will tell you other states have, because we and the WIB director group, we've also interfaced like you did at your conference there, where you're bringing people in around the country. We've been on our WIB meetings having zooming in, or yeah, they use Zoom, zooming in people from Michigan and California and Pennsylvania and around the country. And I will tell you that other states have figured out a way to do that. New York is not inclined to, so they've not demonstrated to date that they're inclined to want to go down that path.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the youth program.
Sure. Keith?
I'm just making sure I'm unmuted here. So thank you very much, everybody, for giving me a minute to talk about this. I'm going to start with our approvals and goals. Emerging Workforce Team will enroll a minimum of 75 new individuals in PY20. To date, we have enrolled 17. Emerging Workforce Team, I'll wait for Dan here.
Yep.
We got it?
Sorry.
Yep. Oh, that's groovy. Emerging Workforce Team will target 19 new work experiences. To date, 5 have been engaged in new work experiences with 4 carried in. So that's a total of 9 active currently. Emerging Workforce Team will target 12 new training opportunities. To date, there have been 4 individuals either approved for or currently enrolled in ITA training, and 1 individual has started an alternative training, what we used to call a non-ITA. I just want to point out that this represents for the first 2 months here that we have met or exceeded the target set by the board. And as far as the trainings go, the one alternative one is in childcare. And then we have some barber and beauty school and a nursing school. Development of program. For the month of August, we had 16 referrals and 10 new enrollments. And here's the graph sort of breaks down the referrals by quarter and by career center. So you see in PY19 quarter one, we had 39, and then we sort of peaked in quarter three with 68. In PY19 quarter four, we took a massive nosedive down to 9 referrals. And for the first 2 months of the first quarter of PY20, we're back up to 37. I just want to say that's a representation. Those numbers are representation of a lot of hard work that my rural outreach specialist did, that my community liaison did, and that myself and my navigators did during the lockdown. We worked really hard to maintain the lines of communication and to develop new lines of communication and new relationships. And in the last, in July and August, we've seen that start to pay off. Last month, when I mentioned referrals, I was asked to give a breakdown of our referral sources. So the orange bars are August, the blue bars are July, and this is just a breakdown of where they came from. As you can see in July, the majority of our referrals came from the workplace. That's Nestor's folks, Dave's folks, career center staff. And then we had, different groups come in from different places. The ones that I want to stress and the ones that I'm really excited about and building are the self-referrals and the community leader referrals. A community leader is sort of the tagline I'm given to individuals who refer people to our program who are not official leaders or working attached officially to a human service or any other kind of partner agency. In some cases, they've been retired individuals. In some cases, they've just been individuals who are important in the social aspect of some of these communities. For the month of August, our biggest source of referrals was CSS Workforce New York. Now, that's my outreach team, that's my navigators, but that's also PTE and ODES. And to me, this is a real positive thing. It represents the agency sort of working together as a team, crossing those lines a little bit to work together. And I think that's a super positive thing. In the month of July, we had 24 total referrals and 7 enrollments. And for the month of August, we had 16 referrals and 10 enrollments. And just to sort of echo some things I heard Dan say and Jamie say, one of the things that I'm seeing is more motivated referrals. When they come to us either as self-referrals or from businesses that are interested in training these young people, then we see a lot more follow through. And we have seen a huge bump in the number of young people going into trainings, ITAs and otherwise. And again, I think that speaks of the motivation of the young people that are coming into the program. And I'm seeing and I'm running into and interacting with a lot of very forward thinking young people. And so I think that's very positive. But it also, I have to point out as well that it represents my navigators giving them labor market information and explaining to them the difference between their lifetime earning potential without a certification or occupational skills training and with, and explaining that really huge positive impact that occupational skills training has on a person's lifetime earning potential. And also, we've really streamlined our process for enrollment. In PY19, our average was around 3 weeks from referral to enrollment. Here at the end of the second month of the first quarter of PY20, we've got it down to 6.5 days, with our projected goal being 3 to 4 days for our sort of speed to market.
Wow. So Keith, did I just hear you say it went from in PY19 3 weeks down to 6.5 days?
Yes, ma'am.
That is really remarkable. And so my hat's off to you, because I will tell you, it does take a lot of work to take that kind of time out of, and that's a significant amount of time out of a process that, quite frankly, is pretty laborious, right? It's sort of set, it's sedentary, it's what people do. So my kudos to you, to the navigators, to your whole team, being able to do that.
Thank you very much. And I don't remember which board member or which individual here said it, but part of that is the embracing the technology. We are meeting these young people where they are. Instead of scheduling 3 meetings 1 day a week, so over a 3-week period, we're able to do a lot of this in one Teams call. The young person doesn't have to arrange transportation. If they're parents, they don't have to arrange for that. So thank you. But there are a lot of things at play. The last thing I just wanted to touch on briefly is our work experiences. As I said, we have 9 currently active. We had 3 new come in July and 2 new come in August. And that's a pretty diverse group of work experience-based trainings that they're in. Everything from childcare to dog grooming to bookkeeping. And again, they're all projected as growth areas in the economy, and over half of them, and well over half of them, end up in job offers from the host site. Respectfully submitted, Keith Guthrie, Emerging Workforce Program Lead. Questions, comments? Anything you'd like me to expand on?
Keith, hi, this is Bill. I was looking on the enrollments, kind of the chart month to month. There, that's the one. Looking at the entered follow-up and the asterisk, I assume no data for several months there. I was looking at it and assuming that was sort of COVID related, but then it goes back to December, January. That's interpreting that as no one has exited the program in that time period. Is that right?
No, that is the exit. When they enter follow-up, when they exit, it's 90 days from their last service, but then it triggers the exit to be at that last date of service. So it ended up being difficult for us to track. And so when we stopped having access to the management reports, we really couldn't 100% accurately report those numbers.
Okay.
I can give you a pretty accurate number on that, but that number, the number that I gave you, wouldn't take into account individuals who maybe exited in error because they received a service that wasn't credited, and then we went back and credited it, and it would not represent numbers of re-enrollments or anything like that.
Okay. Is that then going to hurt our statistics when we're talking about the number? Because if they go into follow-up 30 days later or whatever, or 90 days later, I mean, if we don't have the data to be able to document when that was, or is that going to hurt our performance as far as follow-up?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
because even if an individual does enter follow-up, then we're tracking whether or not they have a job, whether or not they exit it to employment or education. So I don't believe that once we do have that data, and this is speaking anecdotally at this point, but I don't believe that that's going to be a negative thing, because most of our young people right now who are sort of in that maybe exiting mode are exiting to a positive outcome.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, this particular data set is part of our data desert. Without management reports, we can't get the official numbers on this. My guess is that at some point, somebody in Albany will refire back up the report functionality, and these asterisks will be repopulated with actual numbers. But I don't know when that will occur. Right. But as long as, Keith, you know when people are leaving, and people aren't just disappearing from your program, you're actually maintaining contact with them and providing follow-up services, and you know that they're still, that they left because they had a job or whatever the positive outcomes were, then that's really the most important part of it at this point, is maintaining that relationship during follow-up.
That is correct.
I would presume in the system that if there's flags that, hey, this person's about to exit in 7 days or 2 weeks or whatever, and if those aren't available, then I could very easily see someone just kind of sliding under the radar and disappearing from us.
You are correct. And so internally, what we've done to sort of safeguard against that is we keep our internal tracking, and I make sure that my navigators reach out at least once every 3 weeks to everybody on their caseload.
Good deal.
Now, we do have what we refer to as the percentage of kids that fall off the planet, where we just can't seem to track them down. I will say during this lockdown period, that has been a very small percentage.
Okay. Good.
We've only had two young people who fell off the planet, and as soon as the world started turning again and things started opening up, they came back. They did exit during that time. We did re-enroll them. They do not appear in these numbers because I didn't think it was fair to take credit for a re-enrollment.
Okay, very good.
Excellent. Any other questions for Keith? Okay, well, hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept his report.
Jamie, I'll move it.
Thank you, Jamie. A second?
This is Bill. I'll second it. I was waiting
Thank
for somebody
you,
else to do something.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jamie. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. Thank you for that report. Individuals with disabilities.
So real quick before we go, one thing that wasn't on the agenda.
Oh, yes, thank you. I see it.
Yep.
Memorandum of agreement for parenting and Heart and Flip It.
Correct.
Yes, so that would have been in the that would have been in the files that were sent out, I think, this morning. It's an MOA, and so I'm going to stop right there and just let Dan tell us what it is, because it is on our.
One of the things that we're required to do as part of the youth program is find programs that will provide one or more of the 14 elements. So what you see here is an MOA, a memorandum of agreement between us as our workforce system and a program or a company out there. In this case, it's the Parenting with Heart and Flip It partner. So they've agreed to work alongside of us, and they're going to provide potentially up to 4 program elements to young people that are referred to them and enrolled in there. So specifically for individuals, the young people that Keith's team is working with that want to take advantage of leadership development opportunities, supportive services, adult mentoring, or comprehensive guidance and counseling, if it's relevant to the young person's needs and wants, desires, and career trajectory. This would be a place that Keith's team could refer them out to, and we would co-enroll them in their program and then kind of jointly work together. So what you see here is the MOA between CSS Workforce New York and the Parenting with Heart and Flip It programs. Again, for those 4 program elements. So, excuse me, the parenting educator, Karen Sweeney, has agreed to it as of the 18th. This is a no cost. So they won't be charging us for enrollment in their program, and we certainly wouldn't be charging for our program as well. So it's really just a formal agreement so that we can show the folks either in Albany or Washington when they come to visit us to do monitoring that we do actually have connections in the community providing these services. So I would strongly recommend accepting it. I think they're a good program, but we certainly can discuss it if there's other questions.
No questions, and I would make the motion to approve the MOA.
Is there a second?
I can second that.
Thank you, AJ. All those in favor? Any discussion, excuse me, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, it's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Now you can move on to individuals with disabilities. Yeah.
So IDEA, I did a little conversation earlier around this particular one. I won't rehash it all. What I would say is all of our centers do have the newest accessible machines, and in terms of our capacity, and we have built around to make sure that those machines and the functionality they represent will be available in all of our centers. So we are not shortchanging this community. The other thing I would like to see at some point is this group consider undertaking, and we've got 2 more worker bees on the group, and I don't want to overwhelm the group with activities, but at some point I think we should take a look at the services and maybe begin really exploring either programs or services or strategy or outreach or some sort of an approach, systemic approach, even if it's the initial steps of an approach, to really try and engage this target population some more. And I don't have any solid recommendations as to I want to do this over that at this point, other than I really think we need to. The time feels right that we should be taking steps in this direction.
Discussion?
I know, am I unmuted? Okay.
Nope, you're good.
I know, Dan, we were starting to have some meetings, and I think then COVID kind of hit and we stopped having them. Even about like benefits, how working impacts benefits, which is a good conversation to have, not a scary one. And so whenever you're ready to reopen centers and want to pick up those conversations again, I'm happy to have those. That's kind of the starting discussion I always find is people are afraid. They don't want to let go of their SSI or their SSD or their housing subsidy. So we like to go in and do those educational pieces and hopefully, you know, get people really thinking about how work could better their, you know, their personal situation. So as the centers open, keep in mind, we pick those back up again.
Is there some level of interest or ability in trying to roll them out virtually? Because we've got like 30 virtual workshops right now for September. I mean, would your folks, or you know folks that would be willing to maybe put that into the mix as well?
Yes, we could do that. I think what the issue with there would be is, do we have an audience for it that's going to tune in as well? Right. So, but if we could figure that out and make that connection, we can absolutely do that virtually.
We do have a small lending library of tablets available. So if we had folks that wanted to, and they're cellular enabled,
right.
So we could lend them out to participate or something. I don't see that as an insurmountable hurdle if we can identify them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
That's great.
We'll be in touch offline to kind of work through some of that with you if that's all right.
Yep, that's great.
Good. Thank you.
That's really good. That's a very good discussion to have. So thank you. Next item, and I'm sorry to put some of you through this a second time. Operator report.
Nope. That is all you, Nestor.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to share my screen. I believe you guys received the PDF of this. Give me 1 second. Hopefully it loads up. Let me know when you guys can see that.
Yep.
There we go. We see it.
Got it.
Okay, I'm going to give you a real high level overview. You guys have this, and as Dan opened up, thank you to Rayanne for sourcing this data from the Department of Labor, because we are not able to get this out of the reporting mechanism of OSOS. So getting this has been extremely helpful in us, to be able to take a look at where we're at. So I'm going to move relatively quickly, but again, I would take any questions, as they arise. But what you're looking at here is a comparison of 3 program years for July and August in terms of new and served. So when you look at PY18, there were 394 new customers and 708 served customers. PY19, and again, this is just July and August, you go to 160 and 498 respectively. And now we're looking at 2020 here, and you're seeing 119 in July and August, which again isn't that far off from the PY19 marker, but it is relatively, there is a large discrepancy between PY20 and PY18 in all of the numbers. And I think we can look at where the economy was at that time and how services were being delivered. The breakout of that information, when you look at the dislocated workers, I think you'll see that the new customers for dislocated workers, which is the biggest population that should be triaging the career centers right now. But the truth is that many of them are navigating what is in their best interest. That was the earlier discussion that was had. Do I go to work? Is it safe for me to go to work? Do I continue to receive, the benefits of unemployment? But relatively a sharp decline, even if you just took PY19 as your barometer. And then when you look, apologize, that's the dislocated worker. This was the adult customer that we were looking at, not the combination of the two. The third chart is the combination of services. So in review of PY19, you'll see that there were 386 unique customers and 938 services rendered in the system. So it averages out that each customer got about 2.23 services. And most of those were visits. So that means that individuals are coming into those career centers. And a breakout of that 938 is illustrated in that chart, where you could see the real high ones were those initial assessments and interviews, which are part of that required piece. But a lot of people got labor market information, which is a valuable career service, because oftentimes the customer doesn't necessarily have the depth of understanding as to where the trends are. So this gives them a better picture of where they're at. Career guidance on an individualized level, which is a registered service, was also relatively high at the 244. And then you'll see a sprinkling of the other services that are there. When I looked at that, what I did was I took that out and extrapolated which ones were done by WIOA staff. And about 105 of those 938 were done by those staff. So about 1% of these activities were done by WIOA staff in PY19. And if you want to know what those were, they're a breakout here for PY19. Now, when I say PY19, please note that I'm only talking July and August. I'm not talking the full program year. I'm only July and August. And you'll see that, the assessment and interviewing, which is in alignment with the large number in between the adult and dislocated worker service, you do see the majority of the customized trainings and the employment plans being done by the WIOA staff. When you look at the adult versus dislocated worker services that were offered in PY19, you'll see that we were providing a lot more dislocated worker services in PY19 in July and August. Predominantly more dislocated worker than adult services, and you can see that orange bar is your dislocated worker. So when we were looking at those initial assessments, you were doing 155 for dislocated workers and about 113 for adults. So I'm going to move to the current program year, 2020. I'm just taking the first 2 months of the new program year. There's 192 unique customers in the system with 366 activities. And the breakout of those activities of the 366 fares relatively well with the prior program year, where you're seeing your initial assessments and your workforce information and services, which is your labor market information, up at the top of that bar. But you do see a spike in those individual employment plans. And where we were only about 1% of the total center activities, of the 366 services listed in OSOS, 284 or 76% are now coming from the WIOA staff in July and August. So that's a huge increase. But I think what it shows is because those partners are not in the centers, the center is losing the mix of services that create that rich environment. Oftentimes, it's not just the workforce development skills that move somebody to success. It's those other services that can connect them, that can bridge them. As we discussed, some of the transportation, which may be a supportive service, is vital to making sure that an individual can attach to the right types of trainings. A breakdown of that 284 is listed here, and I don't think it's anything earth-shattering. It still is in your assessments and in your individual employment plans and in your LMI data. When we look at PY20, adult versus dislocated worker, we see a flip, and we see that we're serving more adults than dislocated workers. Now, the normal thinking would be, well, with so many people on unemployment, there's going to be a lot of dislocated workers. But again, a lot of them are not attaching to workforce development services, partly because they may be waiting for, stimulus. They may be afraid. They may be waiting to return to, their prior employment, if and when that returns. But it is a shift when you look at the numbers, because when you look at PY20 for the first 2 months versus PY19 for the first 2 months, it was very skewed dislocated worker versus adult. And we're the actual opposite of that. We've done, over that first 2 months, we've done 60 customized job training, and those were at Booth. And kudos to the staff for being able to process those. Of the 60, 37 were new applicants, so that means we had to move them through registration, intake eligibility, and then get them over into the customized job training. So you guys are aware that Dave Pratt, his last day was last week, Thursday. We have successfully interviewed and will onboard a new systems director on September 14th. She's got a strong WIOA background and has strong relationships with many of the partners. So we think that she comes in with a skill set that allows her to move relatively quickly through those initial steps. Both Rayanne and Phyllis and Dan have been instrumental, and we are working on a transition plan to make sure that when we onboard her, we're going to make sure that she has all of the core competencies to make sure that we're successful.
That's great, Nestor. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very thorough report. Comments, questions? That was a lot of information that you just covered. No comments or questions?
And again, kudos to Rayanne for getting me that. I think she got it to me like at 9 o'clock this morning, and we jumped on a call like 9:30 and went over some of the data sets. So I hope to clean that up and in future O&O meetings, drill down a little bit so we can take a deeper dive.
Well, I think that it certainly, I think your explanation of sort of the difference of moving from 1% to 76%, and the fact that you don't have to your point, you don't have a rich array of services to offer. It was pretty narrow. So I appreciate that. Okay. And the operator's report, Dan, we do not need to take action on it to accept it? Okay.
Nope. Because what you'll be doing is you'll be including that in your full report to the full board as well. And then Nestor will actually be presenting a bi-monthly report to the board, which will look very similar, but maybe a little higher level. So
gotcha.
you guys will get it twice.
Okay, very good. On our agenda, we have quality assurance performance report. It says there's nothing to report at this point. Will we have that on the next our next meeting?
I will have issued letters out during the next meeting, but you guys probably won't review them until after the response is received. I will do a formal career center monitoring, so you will see that.
That's great, Rhiann. Thank you.
And Rhiann, we've added to Rhiann's monitoring, at least for this time around. She's spent some additional time with tape measures, making sure we got all the social distancing and all that fun stuff as well. So you may see some new items on this as a one-off, just as we look to reopen and making sure we're good and covered.
All right. Any concerns or anything related to, because I know that we weren't able to get into the centers, we had some other issues. Anything else that we should know ahead of time that could be related?
The only issue I would say related to that is it continues to be Hornell. The Hornell Center, it's a state office building, which makes it hard to get into. And on top of that, you've got Department of Labor, and we're a sublet off Department of Labor. So the OGS services would let us back into that space with proper whatever, but the Department of Labor they are not interested in any way, shape, and form in letting us in. So I don't know, honestly, and I don't know with your connections and conversations, Judy, higher up levels at the state, if the state is not going to be looking at sending their staff back in or begin seeing customers, and I'm beginning to hear things like January and February, and I think we as a board may need to look at something, because that's a long time to leave one of our centers and an entire community on the Western Front with nothing. So
I would recommend, Dan, to just sort of reach out and ping some of your counterparts that also have career centers in state buildings, because they're, I'm sure, throughout the state, and find out what they're doing, because there may be a special carve out. I mean, I just don't know.
yeah, it's anywhere where the Department of Labor is the primary leaseholder. And I've heard this on the WIB director calls. If the Department of Labor is the primary leaseholder and the partners are subletting off of Department of Labor lease, then there's no go. It's the Department of Labor that has no desire. And if they do have a desire, they're not telling us. So I have to go on just what my reality is that they don't seem to express any desire to open up or get their folks back in touch with the public.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
And that's really the reason it's a holdup for us, is because we're a sublet off them. Because if it were like Bath or Elmira, where they kind of have their own sublease in their own little area or whatever, or I'm the lead, then we can reopen. CSS is the lead, then we can reopen. Really that's our bugaboo. So.
Okay. Thank you. Operator RFP.
So I'm going to send out this week. So everybody on the committee, look for in your emails this week. I'm going to send out the last RFP, so that you can please take some time and familiarize yourself with what's in that RFP and what we asked, because that's really what Dave and Nestor's teams are responding to and trying to deliver, is what we asked in those days. I want to just kind of make sure everyone, as a base knowledge, understands what's out there now, because the next exercise will be really begin envisioning what the system might look like next round. So, we've talked about the advent of virtual services and whatnot. If you look at the old RFP, when you look at it, you'll see virtually no virtual services even envisioned in there. And now I think that's going to move. So what parts of those do we want to do as a board? Do we want to push some? Do we want to shrink some? I will share also with you some of the ideas staff have had around expanding hours of service availability and how we might want to look at doing some of that, because we've had some staff conversations on that, and some strategy conversations, and kind of, begin visioning. But we're kind of extending this review and this RFP creation process out, because I really want to give us time to really think about what the world might look like in this case, 4 years from now, because we got a year till the new one kicks in, and then that's going to be a 3-year procurement. So you're really trying to vision what you want the system to look like ultimately 4 years from now. And so what is that? What do we want it to do? Where do we need to get some more information? Do we need to do some internet search for best practices out there in the world? But first and foremost, I want to start with, please, everybody, when I send it out, spend some time really reading it and understanding what we asked last time, so that we have that base to build off of.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions to Dan? I think that's a great place to start. And I do know there was quite a bit of conversation on the last one about what we were looking for. So I think that that'll be great. So that's a great path forward. Again, it's not an emergency. The good news is we don't have to turn this thing around in the next, month. We have some time to really be thoughtful about this and deliberate, and to allow us to do a little freewheeling and a little thinking about what we think the future holds. So that'll be great. Any questions about that? And I'm excited that we have Bruce and we have Margaret joining us as well. So that'll be great.
The other thing I would say relative to that, and I forgot to, Judy, is we're going to have to figure out, so because these meetings are recorded and posted, and because Nestor and over his team are going to be present, and there may be other people that can pop in, we have to be a little bit careful in the RFP that we don't divulge the exact contents of the RFP or make any real decisions that would give anybody who might listen to these meetings and these deliberations kind of a heads up on that. So we do have to be very careful on that, and we're going to probably have to explore some of the breakout rooms functionality of this, so that we have the ability to kind of chat but not be broadcast to the world.
Yep, sounds great. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I think that's a great idea. All right, anything else for the good of the committee? All right, so our next meeting.
Only thing, Judy, yeah, I was just going to say the next meeting. I also have it on my calendar as 2:30 to 3:30, but in the agenda says 2:30 to 3:30, but the invitation that came out was 2 to 3. So
we will amend that. The meeting should be 2:30 to 3:30.
Gotcha.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
2:30, because that's what I'm a creature of habit like that. So 2:30. Perfect. So it's 2:30 October the 7th. So
Just so you know, when Mel looks at meetings and she builds off my calendar, I allow travel time. So it's half hour from Corning to Montour Falls. So I would have the meeting starting at 2 to give me enough travel time. And so she just copied. That's just a snafu that we had, and I didn't. I'm sorry. That's
no
my
problem.
fault.
It allows you to have a little social time, which I think sometimes is pretty valuable. So that's great. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
motion.
Thank you, Bill. AJ, second it. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time.